We're going to, hello, can you hear me? Rhonda, are you?
I can hear you, Judy.
Okay, good. I'd ask you to put your phone on mute.
Yeah.
And anyone else that's on the line to put their phones on mute. 7 o'clock, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I would like all that are on the conference lines to mute their phones. Councillor Rhonda Copeland is present via conference call. Rhonda, you can hear what we're saying. Good evening, everyone. I'm Judy Swanson, the head of council for the municipality of Boissevain-Morton. I'd like to welcome everyone to this public hearing, whether you are here in person, joined by webcast, or on the conference call. In the time of COVID-19, nothing is as it was, and it is with this public meeting as well. As a council, we wanted to take a minute to thank everyone for their efforts to personal distance. And with that, as our guidelines, we have offered this meeting by conference call and live streaming. The process for this public hearing is the following. There'll be a presentation from our consultant, Ernie Epp of Way to Go Consulting. We'll have questions and comments from registered opposed, questions and comments from registered in favor, questions from council, final opportunity for new comments, and then closure and adjournment of the hearing. This public hearing is in regards to local improvement number 2020-01 to authorize the expenditure and borrowing of money for the purchase of land, construction of a new lagoon, and required force mains and other appurtenances for the community of Boissevain and the surrounding area, and the decommissioning of the existing wastewater lagoon. The information that you will receive tonight relates to the proposed project, to the local improvement, along with the authorization to borrow funds to complete that project. Boissevain's lagoon has been a concern to the province as well as to the community for many years. It has been described as the oldest lagoon in Manitoba. The current lagoon does not have the capacity to meet the needs of the existing users and provides no opportunity for additional users. The province has continued to work with the municipality towards rectifying the current undersized lagoon. However, the expectation is that something is done in the near future. The requirement to replace the existing lagoon is seen as Boissevain-Morton's one opportunity to relocate it. By doing so, the lagoon will no longer restrict further development in the southwest area of the community. Canada and Manitoba recently announced a new funding program called Investing in Canada for wastewater treatment facilities, including lagoons. The funding breakdown is 40% federal, provincial 33.33%, and municipal 26.67%. That is why it is important to proceed with this hearing today. We do not want to miss the opportunity. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our consultant, Ernie Epp from Way to Go Consulting. Ernie, if you would, please.
Thank you. Before I get started with the formal presentation that I've got prepared, I will say I'm glad to be back in Boissevain. It's always nice to be back in Boissevain. It's where I grew up, so it's enjoyable to head back. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, this is the only way that I might be able to say hi to Mom. Hi, Mom, if she's watching at Westview Lodge. Otherwise, I won't get to see her this time, or she won't get to see me. So, I am pleased to be here and happy to be helping out Boissevain-Morton with this significant project. This hearing itself is a formal requirement by the province of Manitoba. It's part of the requirement under legislation. So if you wouldn't mind flipping to the history page. Next one, yeah. So Boissevain's existing lagoon does not operate within current provincial requirements and really hasn't for quite some time now. Provincial concerns date back to 1988 on paper, though it appears no action was really taken regarding this until sometime in 2017, so just a few short years ago. Recently, the province has worked with and is continuing to work with the municipality, but at that time to have a study done to determine how to move forward. Options were provided with the most feasible and least expensive option chosen, and that being an aerated lagoon. Potentially purchase land. A force mains a sewer line where the effluent is pumped rather than it being gravity fed. Force mains are needed where the contour of the land. The estimated cost of the project is just under $10 million, which is certainly significant. Boissevain-Morton's portion, subject to. So location. First of all, the location of the current lagoon is very near to a populated area. It's probably, if not one of the closest lagoon to residential in the province of Manitoba. It's right at the edge of town. If you were building a new one, the requirement is that they are, it's 1,500 feet from any residential. And this one's really tight to that number and probably within it. Given the cost for a new lagoon is similar to expanding and retrofitting the existing lagoon, a new lagoon is considered a new lagoon that is at a reasonable distance from the community is being proposed. Significant costs with the current location. So it means either having to haul clay in that does work, or to install a man-made liner, both of which are very expensive to do. So the idea of relocating the lagoon is actually fairly close in costs in comparison to retrofitting where the existing one is. It is certainly an opportune time, given the fact that the higher levels of government funding combined is 73.33% of the total cost. And that certainly makes it possible to do. And that higher level government funding has never been that high before. The highest in the past was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So bringing the municipality's portion down from 33 1/3 to 26 2/3 may not sound like a lot, but it certainly is significant when you're talking about a $10 million project. It's certainly important to recognize that this is the only opportunity the municipality will have to change the location. If the existing one is expanded where it is, that's probably where it's going to be staying, because you're going to have a lot of dollars invested into that location. The exact location will be determined subject to locating suitable soil conditions, as well as the purchase of land if necessary. And part of the challenge of this whole process is some of this pre-work that needs to be done. There's a cost to it, and so in order to be able to look after that cost, having this bylaw in place first is relatively necessary, so that the funds are available to do the work that's needed. Particulars, municipality's portion is approximately 2.7 million. Properties proposed to be, and there are some parcels, the reason that I say wastewater is because some parcels are hooked up to water and sewer. There are some parcels that are sewer only though, so it's those that are hooked up to wastewater that are part of that 757 parcels. Other existing vacant lots in the community that are not currently hooked up to the wastewater system are not currently included in this list. And so if they decided in the future that they wanted to hook up, would have to pay the full amount up front if and when that connection is requested. In order to limit the annual impact of this borrowing, council would look, if you looked at a 15-year time period, that would mean an annual increase of 20% on properties for an annual cost. So the 5-year shorter time, 15-year period, saves about 10% on interest. So the 20% added cost less 10% means it would be about 10% more cost overall for the 20-year versus the 15-year. So it's about, it's 10% for an extra 5 years, or an extra third as long to bring it to the 20 years, which seemed to be reasonable. And while the bylaw shows an interest rate of 4.75%, that's it's normal that this percentage is somewhat elevated to protect against rate increases between now and when the actual borrowing takes place. The bylaw just authorizes the borrowing, and you have to have the bylaw in place before you start the project. but the borrowing, final borrowing for that 20-year period may not happen yet for a few years. So the province always expects you to put in a rate that in the bylaw that's higher than what today's rate is. Rates are updated at the beginning of each month, and so currently the rate is 3.25%, which is about 1.5% lower than what the bylaw has stated, and the annual repayment amount, should that rate remain at 3.25% up until the time when the actual borrowing happens a couple of years from now, then the annual repayment amount would actually drop by over 12%. So, you know, reasonably, no one has a crystal ball, or at least I don't, but the expectation is that the interest rate will be less than 4.75%. Now cost distribution. So for local improvements, provincial legislation provides some flexibility on how the costs can be charged. The options include assessment, which would, if it was all done on assessment, is the same as regular taxes. It's based on the value of the property. Second option is frontage. So frontage is based on the width of the front yard, the front of your property. So a 100-foot wide property would pay twice what a 50-foot wide property would pay if it was all based on frontage. Size being the total square footage of the parcel of land. So if your yard is bigger than the neighbors, you would pay more than the neighbors. And the fourth is per parcel, where each roll number would pay the same or pays a set amount based on a per parcel process, or a combination of these. So I actually I gave a presentation at a conference about local improvements and the opportunities to use these various ways of doing debt servicing, and in the information about the session, I had talked about that it was possible to shift the responsibilities. And when the booklet came out that the conference had put together, they dropped the letter. They dropped the letter from one word. So instead of shift the responsibilities, it didn't quite say that. So at the start of my presentation, when I finally gave it, I had to say that, you know, there is no F in way, but there is an F in shift. I'll let you figure out what the word ended up being. So after considering options, a 50-50 split between per parcel and assessment is what's being proposed in the bylaw. So what that means really is that lower valued properties would end up paying more than if it was just based on assessment, and higher valued properties would end up paying less than if it was just based on assessment. And the reasoning for that is that you know, regardless of the size or value of a house, there's a certain amount of usage minimum kind of amount of usage that every house has, and based on just doing it by assessment, the difference between low valued houses and higher valued or even medium houses was really significant. And so for council, in looking at it, they felt that going and then the last point on here is that the per parcel amount can be fully paid up front once the project's complete, or financed over the 20 years as well. Paying the per parcel amount up front is a one-time opportunity. Once the whole project is done and the actual final borrowing is ready to be put in place, all of those 757 properties will get a notice in the mail, and will have a certain period of time to decide whether or not they want to pay that up front. That will likely not happen before 2022. So a few other factors to consider for Boissevain-Morton is that the final payment for the water plant borrowing of $126,000 and change is due in 2020. So this is the last year for that. Realistically, payments for the new lagoon will only start in 2022 and potentially even 2023. And you know, with COVID-19, who knows whether that might impact the timelines for this project and other things that we might otherwise expect to be doing in our future here. The net impact, based on the difference between these two, really then is a difference of $82,304. or less depending on the final interest rate. And that $82,000, if it's also, it's that number is going to remain fixed for the next 20 years. So over a 20-year period, people tend to have higher incomes, and so the amount that you're paying in 2020, it'll be the same dollar amount the 20th year, or sorry, the amount that you pay in 2022, or so decrease as the 20-year period goes along. So following this hearing, what happens? Unless 2/3 of all of those property owners object, the bylaw, council does have the opportunity and can give the bylaw first reading tonight if they choose to do so. The bylaw and support material is then sent to the province for review and approval, or potentially for a further hearing depending on the number of objectors, if there are objectors. Once approved by the province, the municipality can proceed with second and third reading and pass the bylaw. Without the need for a hearing by the province, turnaround time is normally within 2 months of when the document is sent in. Once borrowing is authorized by passing this bylaw, by giving it second and third reading, then work will be done to determine the location, followed by license application for construction. Construction is anticipated to occur in 2021 with decommissioning of the existing lagoon in 2022, and that again is subject to a few things, including confirmation of the funding. The grant application has gone in, the feds and province have not generally awarded very many of those dollars yet, so we're still waiting. So in conclusion, the municipality has to do something. The province is not going to allow this to continue, and there needs to be action taken. I guess on the positive note, in one way, it's been commented that this might be one of the worst wastewater situations in the province, but because of that, that also very much helps with the municipality's application for funding too. I was interim CAO in another municipality that was in the Red River Valley, and started in fall. In spring, I was only there 3 days a week, and I get there, and the lagoon of one of the communities is at capacity, and so they had applied for emergency discharge, and the provincial employee had come to have a look and called the public works manager and said, "You don't have a lagoon." And he'd go, "And what are you talking about?" And she said, "I've gone to the place where your license says you have that your license says you have for a lagoon. There's no lagoon here." So prior to me being there, a few years prior, they had been told by the province they had to build a new lagoon, got a license. The license was put up on a shelf and it was never done. And so that was approximately April. And we ended up having a few sit-downs with some higher-ups with the province. And in about 13 months, we went from nothing was being done to purchasing the land, getting the grant funding, because that was the most important lagoon for the province at that time, and getting the engineering and the licensing, and actually awarding the tender. And that lagoon was built the following year. So while the lagoon that you have currently is not great, it might actually work in your favor with the circumstances that are in place. With that, I'm going to say thank you, and certainly if you wish, Head of Council Swanson, I'd be happy to answer questions as needed. Otherwise, my presentation is concluded.
Thank you, Ernie. Were there any registered questions for the opposed?
No, there were not.
Any registered questions in favor?
There was one in favor, but no questions.
We're still going through and working together on it. So this is the final opportunity for new comments. Is there any comments here? If not, I will adjourn this hearing. And the final item on our agenda tonight is to introduce bylaw 2020-01. Rhonda, are you able, you're still on the line?
She's still on mute.
Rhonda, unmute yourself. Okay,
Yep,
all right. I just needed you to make sure
yep, I'm here.
that you're here so that you can vote on this, okay?
Okay.
All right, this resolution is moved by Rob, seconded by George. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-01, a bylaw to authorize the expenditure and borrowing of money for the purchase of land, construction of a new lagoon, and required forcemains and other appendages of the community of Boissevain and surrounding area, and the decommissioning of the existing wastewater lagoon as a local improvement, be given a first reading. I'll call for the question. All in favor by show of hands. Rhonda? Rhonda, how do you vote?
Water lagoon.
Rhonda?
Aye.
All right, that's carried.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I just asked if you had voted in favor or opposed.
I'm in favor.
All right. Now, council would like to thank people for their patience with our technology and the special efforts everyone has gone through to get this meeting to take place tonight. Special thanks to Leo and Christy and Brad Peters for their help with this technology, and hopefully it worked really well, and for helping to set up the meeting tonight. I want to thank Ernie Epp, our consultant, for his guidance on this project. None of us here have built lagoons, and Ernie has, so we're very pleased to have him as part of our team. And I want to thank you all for participating in this, and I would ask you to stay safe. So with the business of this meeting having been concluded, I will adjourn the meeting. Rhonda, I'm hanging up.
That's good. Your YouTube didn't match